Today on the show, we have Kria Lindquist. Kria is a visual artist who specializes in dark, surrealist, figurative illustrations and paintings. Their work is an exploration of the human condition, drawing inspiration from dreams, liminal spaces, gender identity and sexuality, esotericism, and various elements of their own self-cultivated lexicon. The work they produce includes original paintings, ink, illustrations, prints, and stickers. Please welcome Kria to the show. Welcome to another episode of Origins, a Creative Journey. Today, I'm excited to bring on a friend of mine, Kria Lindquist. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
So we will start the show the same way that we start every show. Kria, please share with us your origin story. Tell us about your creative journey and how you've got into where you are today.
So I've been doodling and drawing for as long as I can remember. Like as a kid, I always kind of doodled in my notebooks and during class, that whole thing. I didn't start taking art classes until I got into college, so I'm like mostly self-taught. I guess in terms of how should I say, like actually getting to a point where I was selling my work. That took a long time because for me, art was kind of like this purging process where I would be doing something and then I have to stop what I'm doing because I like see something or like get an idea and then I have to like get it out of me. It's just to get it out so it didn't like sit and rot and fester. I just like so it was like this whole purging process and I didn't really care for like what came out. So I usually like destroy what I made. And that went on for years until my friends kind of chimed in and were like, "Hey, like don't do that. You could sell your work." And then I started thinking more and more about like, actually like selling my work. And it wasn't until I was pursuing an AA degree at Santa Monica College where I was working on assignments for classes, but then started creating pieces to sell at goth clubs in Los Angeles. While I was a full-time student, I was on the side or in between classes creating paintings to then sell later on that night at goth clubs. It started off super small. I remember the first quote unquote like gig that I had selling my art was I had like two original pieces, like they were like 8x10s on a little, like bar table with like a couple candles that I sold for like 20 bucks each. So then I started doing that more and more, just like selling at goth clubs. And then I started doing markets and like different events. And then I got into like the vendor circuit in that whole community. So just vending as a full-time sort of job.
That's awesome. And the circuit is actually how we've met, which is, through Blasphemy and Monsterpalooza and many other different shows. But like, I want to go back a second to that earlier part when you were creating pieces, selling at goth clubs. Was that a scene that you had already been into a little bit, or can you tell me a little bit more about how you started going from either attendee to a vendor there, or like were you talking to club owners, or were you just like bringing art, or like can you tell me a little bit about how those early sales opportunities started?
I was attending the clubs as a patron. I would go clubbing multiple times a week and mostly just to dance and drink and have fun, to see friends. And I know like my partner at the time was working at some of these clubs. And so that's one reason why I was there so frequently, I guess. And, my partner at the time obviously knew that I was an artist. Friends of mine that I had made there learned that I was an artist. And, I'd post things online or like on my social media of like pieces that I had made or was like currently working on at the time. People became more aware of the fact that I did art. And like one of my friends was a curator, like an art curator for certain clubs. And it was like, I'd love to have you, like you should do it. And I was like, okay. And so that's kind of how that got started.
So it sounds like it's a whole grassroots kind of friends helping you along the way, which is just fabulous.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
how much pushing did people have to do to you?
There was a bit of pushing. I mean, as I got older, there was less pushing because I started to accept the fact that I created art and that's just what I like did. It was like compulsive, like I couldn't help it. So it's like, okay, I might as well like do something with this. But when I was younger, it was like pulling teeth. Like my friends would get very frustrated with me, especially when they learned that I would just like, tear up a piece of work that I did or like burn it or whatever. And I'm like, screw this, I don't care because it like again, it was like this purging process where I was like, oh, it's icky and I don't like it and I need it away from me. Like I don't want to think about it. I don't want to look at it. And especially because like a lot of my work stemmed from trauma. So it was like I'd get it out and then it was like that needs to be destroyed. I don't like it. So, and I was very stubborn about that, but friends pushing me to kind of like do something more productive with it, to like not just have it be this really sort of painful negative experience for me, but to kind of transform it into something more positive and productive. It's like instead of having these ideas come to me and especially stemming from trauma and being kind of like, oh, it's just something that I like experience and then purge through constantly, like that just it doesn't work. I might as well take that and share it. People communicate with it in different ways. So it's like the fact that my work can like talk to people and they can like even reflect, like when looking at my work, that started to mean something. I was like, oh snap, that's actually kind of important. And and not to mention, I mean, it's kind of silly, but like especially when creating work from trauma, something that's so like horrific, taking that and making money off of it is also kind of its own weird like haha, like I'm conquering this, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's weird.
No, I don't think it's weird at all. And thank you for sharing. I'm really glad you kind of dove into that a little bit more because I find it so fascinating that this creative process was originally around processing trauma, and then now you've turned it into this really positive thing that allows other people to connect and share and, share in vulnerabilities and experiences. And so I'd love to hear about how that process started of you being able to be willing to open up more and be more vulnerable by sharing these things that were probably, I'm going to assume was incredibly painful, incredibly personal to you, to, even with the pushing of friends, it feels like there would be a lot of resistance to sharing it and then selling it and kind of building a larger community and a career out of it. And so I'd love to hear just a little bit more about what was it like in those early days to take such personal work and then start to share it more widely.
Oh boy. Just like thinking back, I mean, it's so long ago, I feel like. So to like pinpoint exact events or moments is a little tricky, but I know like I would be sketching or doodling like in class or even like at lunchtime or something like around friends. It's kind of like out in the open so people would see it. I wasn't like so like discreet about it where I'm like, like this in my notebook. But I think also my friends knew that I was artistic. I had that thing going. I, doodled around. They would ask like, have you been working on anything recently? Or just kind of wanting like more updates. And so like there were times when, yeah, I'd share it and be like, oh, this is what I created the other day or something. And I know like when I was living with my parents, I'd kind of like lock myself up in my room and like all day and all night pretty much, where I would just get on these kicks of like starting a piece and then not stopping until it was done. And I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't like use the restroom or anything. Like I neglected to do these things because I was so like hyper fixated on creating these pieces and just getting it out. And so my parents were like, well, what are you doing in your room? Like they didn't know exactly like what I was doing all the time, like being locked up in my room, rarely coming down to eat or like do anything. So then it was kind of like there was sort of that like pull to see what I was doing. But then like transitioning from that to actually showing my work to sell and like to share with not just a few people, but like, I mean, now it's so open. I don't even think about it. I don't know. I think it was just like over time, it just got a little easier and easier to like just be more open with my work.
That is the greatest answer, I think, to the question. I find this fascinating. Like, it's mind blowing to me. In my art school, Ray Esparza, and I always call his name because I love the man. You put your painting on the wall, and if he liked it, he had this stick with a point. I don't know if I've told this story, and he would point at the parts he liked, and he would put holes through it. And if he didn't like it, he did it to one of mine. He lit it on fire. And his whole point being is to separate yourself from the art, because if you're going to be a professional, this is not about you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You start as the opposite, like you've put it down and you're doing what Ray did to yourself. But you still find, but it takes your friends and family and people to go, no, go, 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 right? You still have this personal connection to let it out, right? It's from my understanding of what's going on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to hear, because it's fascinating. You start out doing this stuff to purge the pain. Is it still stuff to purge the pain, or did it change to this is feelings? Like, do you understand where I'm trying to go with this point?
I think so. Yeah. Like if I'm understanding your question,
Craziness?
no, oh, you're fine. You're not crazy. If I'm understanding your question correctly, am I still creating pieces that stem from that? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
are you still
After all
creating
this
those
time?
really just personal pieces that you got to get out to destroy them, or are you pulling them from something else to transition into this professional, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that is actually something that I've been currently dealing with is, after such a long period of time of processing the trauma that I went through and getting pieces out and creating pieces that really kind of communicate that, I hit a point where I was like, I feel like I processed it. Like I feel like at this point, I feel like I'm literally beating a dead horse, and it's this thing where it's like, okay, I have to sit with myself and really kind of ask, what am I doing now? Why am I creating? Why am I, doing this? So well, I still have a lot going on up here, but there's like different pockets that I can access, right? I have become sort of known for creating pieces that are maybe like kind of like body horror and sort of this like extreme sort of depictions of the human form in various situations. I have become known for that. And so getting out of that or like transitioning from that to something different. And I'm like embarking in kind of unknown territory in a way where it's like, is this all I know? Right? Like, is trauma and dealing with trauma and processing trauma and creating from trauma, is that all I know? And it's like, no, there are other things that I can create. It's just difference. So a lot of the work that I create, I pull from working in like dream spaces or like liminal spaces. I meditate. I like get in a weird headspace. I gotta get in a specific headspace to like really, start seeing things and to get them out, right? And now it's like there was that one like trauma pocket, right? That I'm no longer really wanting to pull from because I've been there, done that. And so now I'm exploring other sort of pockets and other sort of territories. There's one that I've been exploring more and more. It's a place that doesn't really exist. It's just kind of there. It has its own culture, its own sort of like language. It has its own specific architecture. There's specific, aesthetics. It's hard to describe, but I'm now exploring this pocket and trying to pull from that, create imagery from that, and wanting to like construct artifacts from that, if that makes sense. So now it's instead of tapping from a place of trauma, I'm tapping from a place of exploration, which is very new to me.
That's super fascinating. And I can't wait to see more of these artifacts from this world that you're tapping into, Kria. And I think the question that a lot of maybe artists who are looking to maybe explore a new genre or, something different from what they're known for, how are you kind of navigating the maybe pressures of capitalism for lack of a better word, of like, of like, is there that fear of, oh, if I try something new or if I go this different way and I'm sort of, I have collectors who know me for X, but now I'm looking more towards Y. Like, is that, I just love to hear your thoughts on that and how you've been thinking about that recently.
That is an excellent point. And again, something that I have been struggling with and dealing with because it's like, on one hand, I want to create. I want to just do what I feel like doing and not have certain pressures on me. But in reality, it's like I live in a society where there are these specific pressures with regards to like capitalism and making money to like survive. And especially living in Los Angeles when the cost of things has just gone up and up and up. I am at this crossroads where there is fear of like what's going to happen. I don't want to create from a place of like coming from a place of lack. Like I don't want to create with my mind on, oh, I need to be able to pay bills this month, so I need to create something. I think that's a trap that's easy to get into when you're dealing with some of these pressures, like specifically like financial pressures. Things are a little uncertain right now. I feel like this year specifically has been rough, and not just for me, like it's been kind of all around, like everyone's going through it. And it's tough trying to navigate that whole thing while still doing either what you love or doing what feels right or good for you to do, or like something that you can't, like it's like compulsive to do, like you can't help it. What I will continue creating, now and in the future, it may be different, but it's not so extremely different that I would like be in a completely different genre. You know what I mean? My work and what I see, it's still very dark, still very kind of, it hangs out in that sort of almost like chthonic space. It's heavy and there's an intensity, but it's just still different. It's got like little different vibes, if that makes sense. So I'm not so afraid of what I create in the future kind of pushing me out of being able to keep doing what I'm doing and surviving from that. You know what I mean? But that fear creeps in and kind of lurks around sometimes. It's weird. Yeah.
Completely agree and have this same process. It's how do you not end up being like Dolly and still be you and bring your fans with you, right? Is the struggle of every artist and our creative process and how we create. And you started talking about the creative process. You go into this which I find fascinating. This meditation, this mind spot. I'm curious. So you get in a mind spot and we're picking from this new place. Do you still like lock yourself in a room and like it just all's got to come out? So the process hasn't changed for you.
No, not really. I just go somewhere different.
So what makes you an artist hasn't changed. You're just pulling from a new place to get the inspiration and creativity from, if I'm
Yeah.
hearing this.
Well, so that's the thing. Before, it was more of like I'd be kind of hit with a brick. Like it would kind of come out of nowhere. Like I wouldn't really have that much control over like what it was that I was like seeing. Whereas now, like I've been able to work on, creating this method for myself of like getting in that headspace and like accessing that part of my brain. Like, so I have more control over the actual process of it now than I did before. And that's something that I had to work on because I didn't want to keep getting hit with bricks. You know? Like I wanted to have some level of control over what I was doing. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I still get hit with bricks every now and then, but for the most part, I can have control over like accessing certain things.
Follow up, because this is great. So you
Mhm.
now have more control of what you're putting down. Is it more enjoyable, for lack of a better way, of putting it to do the art? And do you still have, there's a part every artist has, like yesterday I drew a painting and I threw it away. Like, screw it, I hate it. Like, and then I came back after I had a cocktail and I was like, oh, this wasn't so bad. Like,
Yeah, I think I can say that now, like, there is a little less pain and torture involved in creating. There is still some. I'm still very hard on myself. I still torture myself with regards to being my worst critic and, fighting with myself all the way through. But it's a little more tolerable than it was before. It's a little less this sort of like gut wrenching, like, God, like, painful process. It's a little more like, oh, like I can experiment with this. Like, let's see how this goes. And then be kind of like, that looked like shit. Like, maybe I'll try something different. Put it aside, have a cocktail, come back to it later and be like, okay, maybe I could do this instead, you know? But yeah, it's not as painful. It's nice.
Going on with the theme of pain and bricks. For you, what do you think has been like the hardest part throughout this journey?
Ah, that's a tough question. Because having to see something that reminds me of very specific events or situations or moments where I was feeling a certain way, and then feeling like I had to get it out and put it down, which is very time consuming. So I'm sitting with it, I'm putting it into being. So I'm like taking all that ick and I'm taking all that time to recreate it, which already is like, I don't want to go through this. Like, why do I have to go through this constantly? I want to just bury it and forget it. I don't want to keep dealing with this. So the process in itself was very, very difficult. And especially because I felt like I couldn't help it. Then on the flip side, and this applies to everything, being so critical of myself, the perfectionist that I am, feeling like nothing I create is quite good enough or like accurately depicts what I'm trying to communicate or what I see, and feeling so frustrated with the physical limitations of my own body, my own hands, my own skills, like feeling like I don't know how to actually get it out exactly the way that I see it is extremely frustrating. And then beating myself up for it. That whole, that is not a fun process at all. Very difficult. I torture myself like crazy. I think that's really been the most difficult thing. It's my own psychology, my own psychological bullshit. Dealing with that is definitely the most difficult or the hardest thing. Everything else is kind of like, it's fine.
You and every other good creative person I ever met. Yes. Yeah. You shake your head in an agreement. Yes. Yes. What would you say to someone starting out or another creator? What advice would you give them?
Listen to your gut, trust your gut, do whatever you want, and don't really listen to anyone else, especially if they're not an artist, because they don't know what they're talking about. I avoided taking art classes for so long because I had non-artist friends telling me of the horrors they experienced being in art class. And if you feel like creating, if you feel like pursuing arts, pursue it and be unapologetic about it. Like, just go in, just do it. If you feel like you need to learn some skills, okay, learn some skills. If you want to explore other avenues, do it. Like, just don't be afraid to just do the thing and don't listen to anyone's garbage.
Awesome advice. Awesome advice. I'd love to hear because even with our podcast, we have a lot of artists giving advice, and what's a common question we ask is just because we're all about trying to help creatives do more creative stuff. And I think often there's, to your point, whether it's a non-artist offering advice or maybe a bad art teacher, which I admit that there totally exists. Just because I was an art teacher doesn't mean I defend them. I'd love to know, like, how have you been able to discern between good advice and bad advice, or is there any sort of pattern that you've seen? You mentioned artists versus non-artists or creatives versus non-creatives. How are you kind of parsing information that you take in on whether or not this is good advice or bad advice?
That's a tricky one because I still struggle with my own insecurities. If someone tells me something, regardless of who they are, part of me is still listens and it's like, oh man, what if, like, oh, I can't, or like, I shouldn't, or whatever. But, taking my own advice, that's always fun. Paying attention to those who you look up to or see as successful, like in your eyes, giving you advice or giving you feedback. I think those might be instances that would make the most sense if you were to listen to someone else and then the words that they are telling you. Because obviously you want to be as successful as you can be for the most part. I mean, I would assume most people are kind of on that track. Maybe I'm wrong. But if someone who I looked up to were giving me advice or feedback to be helpful, I'd be like, you're the person I would listen to because you're doing it right. Or not right, but like maybe I like aspire to be at a certain level and they're like, well, here's some things that I would hand off to you. It's like, okay, like I can take that. But even then, I think you still have to kind of really sit with what's being told to you and be like, does that really resonate with me and what I'm doing? Is this the path that I want to go down? Or is this the advice that I feel will be helpful for what I'm going for? So I think you always have to question. I don't think following blindly is good either. You always have to question and self-reflect.
I love this. I don't want to play with this a little more, but you got to follow my crazy train. Miyazaki, who does My Neighbor Totoro.
Yeah,
Okay. And then
love me
there's
exactly.
Oba, who does Death Note. Do you know Death Note?
I remember reading the
Okay.
manga
He's the
when I
guy who
was
did the
younger.
manga.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a dark stuff. It's the opposite of My Neighbor Totoro. Ever see interviews with him? Miyazaki is the most depressing, negative human being who ever lived. The documentary on him was fabulous, right? And you say, Oba, who's the most positive? Like the world's the greatest place. Like, and it's fascinating. They create different art to different extremes. You sound like, and your art, I just love the multi-hand stuff. It just love it. It's kind of dark, but you've got all these friends helping you. You've had all these positive things helping you. You're Oba, like, and you got, you don't have the Miyazakis around. So I'd love to hear what's some of the best and some of the worst advice you've heard to get where you are.
Well, some of the worst advice I wouldn't necessarily say it was advice necessarily, but like constantly being told about like the starving artist, right? Like if I were to pursue that, I will be miserable and starve for the rest of my days and not make a living. It's like impossible to make a living off of that. So why even start? Why even try? Was something that was perpetuated like all throughout my childhood and everything, and which led me to try and pursue other avenues like maybe I'll be a scientist or whatever, and I'm like, no, I can't. Like, I think it's really just to like fucking do the thing. Like don't think, do just fucking do it. To be like unapologetic about it. Like I know I had this one teacher, not to Paul Ma, who was teaching contemporary art theory and practice, who he was this was at Santa Monica College years ago, but he was just amazing in that like he provided like all this information, and it wasn't focused on like, white cis man art, like it was branched out all over the place. And he encouraged all of us to explore and experiment and just get weird, like to just get weird. And I really appreciate that. Getting weird is important and allowing yourself to just get weird. And not like, and I'm paraphrasing here, he didn't like say that, quote unquote, but that was definitely like a thing where like, or implied where it was like just don't be afraid to do the thing.
I think we should now quote you as saying, just get weird. We
Just
totally
get
can do that.
weird.
Just get weird. I love it. I love it. I'm going to steal one of Chris's favorite questions because this is something I'm actually really interested in is who are some of the big influences that have kind of contributed to the way you create or just like your body of work or just like in general who have been some of the big influences in your journey?
I am admittedly terrible with remembering all the names of all of the amazing artists that have inspired me because I mean there are just so many. I will provide a list for you because trying to get it out is just going to be like a whole thing.
No worries, Kria. So if you are interested, listeners and viewers, make sure you check the show notes and I will follow up and we'll make sure that all of the inspirations are there.
Walk me through locking yourself in a room and the actual drawings. Like you start out with pencils and then there's just Rapidio pens, and there's no right answer. How do you technically create your stuff?
It depends. In most cases, I sketch in a sketchbook with pencil just to kind of get like the rough idea out. And then I'll take the image and I guess like redo it on like, the appropriate type of paper and size that I want and all of that. There are other instances where I will see an image so clearly, I can just pull a blank sheet of paper out and it's like burned in there already and I literally just trace it. Like it's there are some that are just that stark. And then there are others where I'll get like an idea or image and then I think like, okay, this I feel like would fit really nicely in this size, like in this kind of frame or something, and then go out and find it. And then I'll work on the actual like official piece without making a rough sketch. I just go straight in with pencil and then ink, or even just like paint to start painting. I think it really just depends. It's my methods are kind of all over the place.
So it even depends how it came to you, depends on how you actually create it.
Yeah, yeah. Like that shifts and changes. So it's weird to keep up with, but I do my best.
Which way do you enjoy more?
Enjoying more is
For all you listeners, she just
Like
did quotes with fingers on the enjoy.
those moments where it's so stark, like that image is so stark that like it's like I'm possessed and I'm just like doing it without even thinking. It's just there. I think that would be my preferred, even though that in itself is kind of like just like it's like a head trip because I feel like I'm not even like there. I'm just like clicked into it and I just do it. And everything else around me is just like gone. And I'm just like operating like that. That's what I kind of strive for, but it's not necessarily like I'm enjoying it because I feel like I'm not even really quite there, if that makes sense.
You're in it, but you're not really feel like creating, but you are creating. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Kria, follow up to it. When I plan out a whole drawing, it sucks in the end to me. When I just go and feel it, it just turns out better in the end for me. So how about you?
So that's pretty much it. When I try and force it out and control it, it gets stiff, it gets weird, it feels inauthentic to me, and I can't jive with that. Like, I definitely feel like my best works come from when I get weird and I'm like, oh, and just doing it. Yeah, because much more natural feeling, like it's just coming out. It's like I'm not pushing anything, I'm not forcing anything, I'm not trying to control or it's very hands off, just kind of like letting it flow out. And there it goes. And there it is.
That's super cool. I mean, I definitely can relate to there being a little bit extra magic when you're just sort of letting it go and working on maybe a more unplanned piece. But Kria, this has been super awesome. Unfortunately, we always need to wrap up as much as I hate doing so. Where can people find more about you, see your art, and experience more of your magic?
So I post all my work as well as events that I'm doing on my Instagram, Kria_Lindquist. But I also have a website. Oh, that would be KriaLindquist.net. But yeah, like those would be probably the best places to go to.
We always give our guests the final words, anything on their mind. No topic is off limit. And the mic is yours, my friend. This has been fabulous today.
All I can say is thank you so much for having me here, for asking me these questions that I can share with viewers and listeners. It's been a pleasure, and I really enjoyed interviewing with you guys. You guys are fun.
Thank you for joining Rick and myself on another episode of Origins, A Creative Journey, a Designer Con production. Please like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, download and listen to us every place you get your favorite podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Origins, A Creative Journey, all one word. Drop us an email for thoughts, ideas, or maybe somebody you'd like us to interview at dconpodcast@gmail.com. And make sure you join us in Las Vegas for DesignerCon, North America's premier annual design convention. All the information can be found, including tickets, at designercon.com. Till then, enjoy your own creative journey.